Let me tell you about someone in my tribe who couldn't hunt, couldn't fight off a bear, could barely walk fast anymore. And somehow, without her, none of us would be here. I know that sounds dramatic, but stick with me, because this one idea actually explains something scientists couldn't figure out for decades. I'm talking about my own grandmother. And once you hear why she mattered so much, you'll never look at old age the same way again. We always picture survival as the strongest hunter with the sharpest spear. That's the story we tell ourselves, anyway. But there's a theory that says the real hero of early humanity looked a lot more like this. Here's the actual problem ancient humans had, and it's bigger than most people realize. Human babies are basically useless. Not for a few weeks, like most animals, for years. A baby chimp can cling to its mother's back within days of being born. A human baby can't even hold its own head up. We are, without exaggeration, the most helpless newborns on the entire planet. Now picture being my mother 80,000 years ago. A newborn who needs her every single second, and a toddler who also can't survive alone. She's torn in two directions at once every single day with no one else around to help her handle it. She can't hunt properly. She can't gather enough food on her own. She is, in every sense of the word, stuck. Scientists actually have a name for this exact problem. They call it the obstetrical dilemma, and it's genuinely fascinating. Human babies are born early, before the brain even finishes developing, because of one very specific anatomical limit. Our hips simply can't get any wider. If they waited any longer to give birth, mothers wouldn't survive it. Which means every single human mother throughout most of history needed serious backup. Not occasional help, constant, reliable backup. And that backup wasn't the father. He was usually gone for days at a time, out hunting far from camp. It was someone else entirely. It was her own mother. In my case, it was mine, my grandmother. Anthropologists actually have a formal name for this pattern. They call it the grandmother hypothesis. And once you understand it, it changes everything. Once a woman stopped being able to have children herself, evolution didn't just discard her. It gave her a brand new role. She became the second pair of hands, the one who watched the toddler while the exhausted mother nursed the newborn. She dug up roots. She gathered food that a mother juggling two children simply couldn't manage to collect herself. She knew exactly which berries were safe to eat and which ones would kill you. That knowledge took decades to build. She'd already survived 40 winters by that point. She had already watched every mistake happen once and remembered every lesson from it. And because she took some of that impossible load off, mothers could have their next child sooner than they otherwise would. That one shift, one extra pair of hands, is a huge reason humans could have babies closer together instead of years apart. More babies survived infancy. Tribes grew faster. And the tribes lucky enough to have grandmothers pulled noticeably ahead of the ones that didn't. This isn't just a nice theory either. We see the exact same pattern in only two other animals on the entire planet. Orcas and elephants, that's it. Out of every species on Earth, we're in very specific, very rare company. In both species, females live for decades after they physically can't reproduce anymore, which almost never happens anywhere else in nature. And in both species, it's the oldest female who actually leads the entire group, not the strongest or the fastest. Elephant matriarchs can remember a watering hole that only appeared once, during a drought that happened 30 years earlier. That single memory carried by one old elephant can be the difference between an entire herd surviving or not. Orca grandmothers lead their pods toward food specifically during the hardest, leanest years, when everyone else is struggling to find any. And pods that lose their oldest female noticeably struggle more. Their odds of survival actually measurably drop after that loss. Humans are the third species that evolved this exact pattern. And honestly, that is not some random coincidence. Before writing, before books, before anyone could look anything up, grandmothers were, quite literally, The library of the tribe. Which plant heals a wound? Which one brings a fever down? That entire body of knowledge lived in one place, her memory. Which mushroom looks perfectly harmless, but will quietly kill you 6 hours after you eat it? She knew, without having to guess. If she died before passing any of that on, the knowledge didn't just fade slowly. It vanished completely, permanently, overnight. And here's something people almost never talk about. Grandmothers were often the ones actually keeping the peace inside the tribe. Young hunters get reckless and impulsive. Young mothers get exhausted and short-tempered under the pressure of raising children alone. An elder who had already lived through every possible crisis knew exactly how to calm a fight before it tore the tribe apart. Now picture the complete opposite. A tribe that suddenly loses its elders to a brutal winter or a sickness that spreads fast. Almost overnight, nobody remembers where the safe water source is during a drought. That knowledge simply isn't there anymore. Nobody remembers which food is actually safe to eat. The younger members have to learn all of it themselves through painful trial and error. And trial and error, when your entire tribe is already starving, doesn't just cost time, it costs lives. Some anthropologists genuinely believe this exact difference is what separated tribes that thrived from tribes that quietly vanished without a trace. It wasn't always the strongest hunter who saved the group in the end. Sometimes it was simply the oldest woman standing among them. And honestly, I think we've quietly forgotten all of this in the world we live in today. We live surrounded by speed, hustle, and constant urgency. And somewhere along the way, we started pushing our oldest people to the side. But for almost all of human history, elders weren't some kind of burden to be managed or tolerated. They were the actual reason anyone in the tribe made it to adulthood at all. Full stop, no exaggeration. So the next time someone casually says older people don't really contribute anymore, I want you to remember this exact story. They might be the specific reason our entire species didn't quietly go extinct 30,000 years ago. That's not a small thing. My grandmother never threw a spear, never once fought off a predator, and she still might be the reason my family exists at all. So here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What actually happens when a tribe loses everyone who remembers how to survive? Because it's not just sad, it's genuinely dangerous. And I think most people have no idea just how dangerous it really was. That's exactly the story I'm covering next. And honestly, it might be even more unsettling than this one. If stories like this are your thing, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more of this kind of history coming. Thanks for sticking with me until the end. I mean that. See you in the next one.